Hey everybody, and welcome back to the channel. For this episode, I'm so excited to welcome Eshom and Ian Nelms. They are writers and directors of the movie in theaters and on demand called Fatman. So as we prepare for the holiday season, get a little Santa in your life, get a little Mel Gibson, a little Walton Goggins with some firearms. Be sure to go to a theater or to watch this movie in the comforts of your own home. And I wanted to give this video a little intro because I wanted to just express how proud I am of the guys. They are some of the first people that I ever met when I moved to Los Angeles. We worked together for a while and I'm just super duper proud of them. I love seeing their movies on the big screen. I love seeing their evolution as artists. And it is really, really fun to be able to do interviews with filmmakers whose work I've enjoyed, who also happen to be my friends. So I hope you love the interview. I hope you love Fatman. I hope that you have a great holiday season and that you are safe and you are with people you love. And if that's yourself, it still counts. Everybody hang in there. And just dive into this very in-depth conversation with Eshom and Ian Nelms. Love you guys.
It took me until like the last segment of the film to figure out exactly why my heart was so glad. Are you ready for this?
Yeah, let's go.
You guys made a movie version of The Night the Reindeer Died.
Absolutely.
And I mean, so
yeah, it's a little more sober than that, but yeah, I mean, I think we didn't even consciously think of that when we were crafting it either.
It's funny to look back because I like Scrooge, but I'm not like I didn't even recall that trailer was in there. But then after everyone brought it up, after our trailer came out, I was like, holy shit, were we like subconsciously channeling fucking Bill Murray and Scrooge?
I didn't so I don't watch trailers like on purpose because I want to see a movie like it with fresh eyes, like as fresh as possible. Because at this point, I've seen so many movies that if I see the trailer, then it gives me too many ideas as to where it's heading, right? And it also even just knowing who's starring in it also gives me too many ideas of like how I feel about it based on my relationship with that performer or whatever. And so Walton Goggins like puts on, so this was all a surprise to me is what I'm saying when I saw the movie, because
this is amazing. I love it.
So Walton Goggins puts on like the white. Oh, right. It's like totally fresh and it really helped. And then so Walton Goggins towards the end is like, he's in this white sort of camo for snow outfit in hunting. And when they get into this face off, I like yelled out loud and I was like, holy shit, this is like Scrooged. And I like, oh my God. And you're right, like definitely way more sober. But I mean, I was like, dude, fuck Lee Majors.
Lee Majors was great, but Walton Goggins.
Yeah, like not a phrase I ever thought I would say in my life, but here we are.
I can't even say that we consciously thought of the white suit in that connection.
I know, that was what was nuts.
And we were like, whoa, he's even wearing a white suit like that.
I mean, is it just because, like, I don't know, maybe that's just like where your mind goes. It's like, oh, it's snow, so he'd be in this white suit. It's fucking, it's crazy. I mean,
we were thinking more of like our childhood G.I. Joes and like Blizzard.
Totally. Definitely. And I think that it's like, I think that through coincidence, you guys came around to that because I mean, obviously if he's hunting in the snow, he's going to put on a professional rig.
Yeah.
So anyway, once I figured that out, I was like, yeah, I was like Julia Roberts in Pretty Woman, like, yay.
So you didn't know that was coming, like that they would actually square off like that?
No, the way that you guys paced the movie had me wondering what was going to happen in the third act, because I was like, I think the normal way that this would have been treated is that the majority of the movie feels like kind of a Straw Dogs experience. Like it's just like totally from what, like at least half of the movie is just going to be like people beating the crap out of each other. I just assumed that it was going to be more that kind of thing. And I was and it was paced differently than that. And so by the time that the third act rolls around, I found myself really wondering, like, well, I don't know. I mean, it seems like he's getting close. I don't know if he's actually going to find him. There has to be a payoff, but now I don't know what it is. And so I liked it because it kept me on my toes.
Yeah.
And I mean, you know, both Walton Goggins and Mel Gibson are not people I would want to face off against.
Sure. Sort of put them together.
Yeah, like ever. And so, but also like, don't forget, like, don't ever forget Mrs. Claus. Don't forget Ruth. Don't forget Marianne Jean-Baptiste. Like, because I don't want to spoil anything, just in case like people haven't seen it that are watching. But by then I was like, yes. It was a lot of Christmas fist pumping in my house. Like,
that's amazing.
Well, it sounds. I'm glad you had a blast with it.
Yeah, I did. I had fun, and I'd like to know if you guys consider this, with its surprising elements and with its intricacies, would you guys say that this is a Christmas movie?
Without a doubt. It's about Santa Claus.
For us, it is a Christmas movie, but of course, it doesn't treat itself like a Christmas movie, you know?
But we want to sort of avoid a lot of the cliches of the genre.
Like when we were writing it, I remember, you know, it was like, oh, do we want to see, you know, Chris and his sleigh going across the moon? We're like, no, we don't want to see any of that stuff. Like, we don't want to see everything that's been done before. We want to see all the moments that are sort of before and after and in between those moments.
That's actually something that I wanted to ask you, was that when I realized that you weren't going to show us Santa actually delivering presents, I was like, all right, these guys have balls. And
we will show you him coming home gunshot, you know.
That's the thing. So did you guys ever sit back and just create a night of delivering presents in your mind that you just didn't put in the film? And if you did that, like, did you go through that process of like, what do we think that like hardcore Santa's Christmas night is really like?
I mean, well,
we painted a picture of what we thought what would have happened, and then we just wanted to show you kind of the aftermath of it, because the one thing that was scary for us is that having like a grounded approach, we were a little afraid that if we started showing too much of the fantastical element, that you as a viewer would kind of be like, okay, this is bullshit. It's Santa, which is a bullshit thing. So yeah. I think that, like, to try to get our audience invested enough to take the themes and the commentary that we're kind of underlaying underneath the film seriously, we really wanted to not hit your bullshit meter as much as possible. So we did decide, okay, we're going to strip those moments out, because then as a viewer, you'll be in with the character for the first 20 or 30 minutes. And then you'll have to take him seriously, and you'll have to take those themes seriously.
Yeah. I mean, for us, I mean, look, in this version, Santa's going to be more like a FedEx, Amazon delivery man, as opposed to some sort of glossy,
right, with the rockets and the.
I felt like I want to know more about the universe. Like because your approach to it worked, in that it left me with like interesting questions I'd never thought of before, right? Because so I was like, I'm thinking about, especially Mel Gibson at one point asked the question, like, how do you think I got this job? And I was like, oh shit, how did he get this job? Like, and I want, like, I started thinking about, like, could you expand this universe? Is that something that you've thought about? Do you feel like this is something that you could revisit? Because the end kind of, that I don't want to specifically say what it is, it does kind of leave it like, well, he's not done delivering presents.
Exactly. He's got more.
I think honestly for us, when we first mapped out this story, we actually had a prequel. So we had a prequel and we had this one. And so this one was much more doable. But the prequel's there. And then obviously, you know, there could be some further adventures,
sequel, yeah.
you know?
That's the thing. Well, actually, it's interesting that you say that, because it felt to me like there would have been a prequel to this. Like I mean, as an audience member, I'm into that idea. So like when you're talking to like your money people, I'm just saying, because it was, I know where it ends up is like, it was a little bit, it had that vibe at the end, a little bit of Rare Exports. Do you guys see that one?
Yeah, for sure.
Totally enjoy that movie.
Enjoy that movie.
It's great.
Yeah.
And it has, that movie like kind of left me traumatized, and this one sort of has, it's like adjacent in a way, because like where the movie ends up, I'm like, Jesus, wow. And did you guys hear a lot from people? They were comparing it, they were not comparing it, but rather saying, this is my favorite Christmas movie since Bad Santa.
I think there's a demographic that's responding to it for sure.
Oh shit, Eshom, you're good at this. You're good at this.
Way to go.
But you know what's funny is like Ian and I were just talking, and we were like, oh yeah, like so we were talking about our first DVDs that we ever bought, ever.
Oh
and then
God,
you know, and so
amazing.
Right, so mine was Unbreakable.
And mine was Unforgiven. Those were the two first DVDs we bought, which is kind of like a.
And if you think about this movie in that context, for us, they put a lot of pieces together.
God, those are really good first DVDs. Jeez, and you're right, because it's like it ties actually to me finding out that David Gordon Green was an executive producer on that. Do I have that data right?
He was, he came on and he helped us facilitate the project there and get all the pieces together.
So when I read that, I was like, oh, that's super interesting, because I feel like even if he didn't have necessarily a creative hand in things like production design or shooting or anything like that, I still feel like the partnership makes a lot of sense.
Absolutely.
Well, we ran into him at South by Southwest when we were there with Small Town Crime, because I think he was presenting an award to
the Mud, Jeff Nichols, right?
Maybe it was Jeff Nichols. I can't. Maybe it was Ty Sheridan.
Oh, anyway,
you're right. Ty Sheridan. It was to Ty Sheridan.
Nichols was doing Michael Shannon.
And Nichols was doing Michael Shannon. So afterwards, at the little sort of soiree, we tracked him down, like wolves, because we're big fans of his work.
But I mean, like a lot of his early work really resonated with us. So like all the Real Girls.
Yeah, I like his studio stuff. Yeah,
yes.
I like his studio stuff too. It's great. I think he's a wonderful filmmaker. But in particularly what really drew us into him and why we were like hounding him is because of his earlier first 3 or 4 films were just so instrumental and inspiring to us. We went up to him. We were like, oh man, we love your work. And we had a nice little conversation with him. And then when the list sort of came out from our reps of like, okay, who do you want to help produce this? And it was a list of like Rough House was on there, and we were like, oh man, like we love these guys, like let's go chat with them. And ultimately Brandon James, who's their executive that runs their company over there, as a producer on our film, and they were busy doing a ton of other stuff over there, so he ended up doing the lion's share of the sort of production side on that side. So that's why the credits are the way they are.
But it's a little bit different gear for them.
Yeah,
absolutely, because it feels almost like a bridge as far as their work. Like this movie's, it's in between the stuff that you're talking about, like his earlier stuff, and then every time he makes a studio movie too, I feel like he's getting away with something, if that makes sense.
Right.
It ends up being like a really cool, like it's like a Pineapple Express or a Halloween, or like the movie that he did with Sandra Bullock.
Yes, I can't remember what it's called, but the purple cover is in my brain right now.
Right, and so it's like I'm always like, ooh, David Gordon Green, this is gonna be weird, and I'm into it. Because my recent favorite of his that I am so obsessed with was Prince Avalanche. It's not that recent anymore, but it's within the last like 5
I like
years.
that movie. Yeah, Paul Rudd
So-
and Emile Hirsch. Yeah,
Totally, like such an interesting movie, and just the aesthetics of it. And that's the thing that I kept thinking about when I was watching Fatman, was like, this is not bright red, bright green, the Santa that you've
Yeah.
always known. This is very much like muted palette, but the small town warmth of Alaska. Like, I was obsessed with the post office. And
So what a
that was
wonderful
a great location.
Yeah.
and you guys shot in Canada, right? Mostly?
Yeah,
Yes.
Ottawa.
Yeah, we
around
shot
Ottawa.
around Ottawa. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what
Which
I
was
picture the whole
amazing. I mean,
place is like.
Yeah, I mean, it was amazing
was pretty
getting
incredible.
those locations. I mean, even the farm to get the homestead, Chris's homestead, we went and looked at probably 70 to 100 farms, drove around for like 5 days until we found that one magical place. I remember when Mel walked on set and he looked around and he was like, "Holy smokes, you guys built all this?" Well, no, Mel, this is real.
Yeah.
Like,
Oh, wow, what a great set, Rob. It's real. Like, yeah, the incredible thing was like that barn that he comes out of in the beginning after, he's limping home. Like that barn was built in like 1890s or something like that. And the house, the original exterior of the house that he walks towards, same thing, 1890s.
yeah.
It's wild.
And it's so low key warm, and it feels like it's like the locations team and you guys smashed it, because it really makes, there's so much about this movie that's so subtle and it's so small that adds up into this huge thing. And as a person that's watched your work over the years, I think that's the thing that really makes me excited for every new movie that you do, is that there's a different sense of place in everything. And it really does it feels like, to me, like I kept thinking about what a through line for your work might be, especially with the last, what is it, like 3. I was thinking, is there a through line spiritually? But for me, visually watching it, the through line is definitely that I remember specifically every place that, all the places your movies take place.
Yeah.
Like they all, and so I, instead of me theorizing about it, do you guys feel like, now that, we've covered the last few features, like everywhere I've worked, basically. And
Yeah.
do you feel like there's a through line for you when you're considering all this stuff? Like, is it a theme, or is it something about a character?
I mean, I think one thing that kind of comes to the surface is the working class person. I mean, Ian and I are from parents who are, we're small business owners.
We lived a lot of that, like sort of mom and dad talking about the plight of owning their own business and this and that, and oh, we can't get this, and this is the hardships, and we got to do this. Oh my gosh, and it's a constant struggle when you own your own business, that you're just trying to just stay afloat and trying to get and there's always all these obstacles. Like, I mean, beyond like, trying to keep your business alive and keeping people, buying or getting what you're giving, but just, I mean, the like your taxes and like how much you're taxed, and like there's the whole the whole government side of it as well is frustrating for small business owners, because it doesn't like it doesn't always lean in their favor. It's always a struggle.
And I think if you look at, like Lost on Purpose, Waffle Street, Small Town Crime, Fatman, they all have that theme, right? Of like these working class people struggling to get through.
And I guess you're right. I mean, all those locations are places that we've lived in a way. Like the dairy farm, we didn't live on a dairy farm, but we grew up on a horse ranch, and we lived around a lot of dairy farms and had a lot of friends that owned dairy farms. Their families did. And then in the restaurant business, we've spent plenty of time in the restaurant business.
We've slung some hash in our day.
And then with Small Town Crime, we've never been on the police force or detectives, but we certainly have lived in a small town. And have watched a lot of Clint Eastwood movies. So, I mean, that probably does something for us.
There's a little fuel for the furnace. Yeah.
There you go. Well, and also it's people really fighting for what they're passionate about too. And just the fact that you guys are telling me that, this is exactly who I always have known you as, are these guys that are like, we're just going to do this. And so we're at South by Southwest, and we're going to track down David Gordon Green. Like, I just want to point out, in case you've never thought of it this way, that there are so many people ahead of you that have found a filmmaker at a film festival that they really loved and bothered them. But how many of those people were able to parlay that into a genuine partnership with a final product that everyone is really proud to have been a part of?
Yeah.
That's like,
Yeah,
that's a
that's tough,
really,
yeah.
it's amazing. And it's because I mean, I remember you as being like, I don't know, dude, these really crazy talented guys I know are so goddamn enthusiastic about making movies. I don't know. Like, that's all I know about. That to me is like your shining heart.
Look, I think it takes definitely some tenacity, right? Like you got to have metal to get here. You got to have a thick skin. It really helps that Ian and I have each other to lean on when times get tough, and you need a kick in the fanny. Like, it's great to have someone like there for you, there to give you that extra nudge when you need it, or there to pick you up when you stumble.
Yeah, I feel like you end up trading. We trade off all the time. You know, it's like, oh man, he's down, I'm down, and then it's just like, get back up, we got this, or we're working on this, or get excited about this.
You're beautiful, man. Keep going.
And that's kind of how you guys direct too. Am I right about remembering that there isn't like a clear division of duties when you guys are on the set?
Yeah, I mean, look, our intent, when we conceive the picture and the writing process, a lot of our views are sort of melded and welded together. And so when we get on set, you know, we're as synced up as humanly possible.
I will say we lean on each other we continue to say that we've become ridiculously codependent in the directing department, mainly because like for my side of the example would be that Esh is an amazing story artist. So he'll board out the entire script, which is clutch, because it's when you're trying, I mean, the whole point of being a director is trying to get your vision across to the actors and the crew. And you're just like, hey, this is what it is. And you just go, da, 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 this is what I'm hoping for. And they go, okay, great. I get the idea. Let's start there, you know?
But all that preconceived stuff comes in our writing.
Yeah, when we plow through that script, usually all the battles are won and
I
fought.
mean, how many times Ian's like, when we'll sketch something out together, and he's like, oh, that's exactly how I see it. And it's like, yeah, because we're literally doing like topographical maps of the sequences. Like, oh, hey, they come in here and they look over there, and he's like, well, I saw it a little. Okay, so we'll
the couch is over there, I thought, and he came in the door here.
We'll synthesize those visions right there.
Ridiculous.
And also, like, our third amigo, our third brother, from a different mother and father, Johnny Durango, our DP. We've done 4 movies with him now, and such big love for that man. He's such a huge part of our process.
I just have so many things that I just want to be like, I'm so proud of you guys. Like, it's just exciting. It's really, it's fun to watch all of your stuff and to see it all together. It makes me like, yeah, man, there are a few people that I've come across in all of my time here in LA, which has been like a long time now. And
it's happening fast.
Going fast.
And it's really wonderful to see that, like, the impression that you guys have always given is exactly what's paying off for you now, because it's like you just love it, like you and it comes across when you're making movies about Santa Claus with a bullet wound. And how did you're also consistently working with these fantastic actors.
Yeah.
So how did Mel Gibson come aboard? Did Jane Kasmerick call him?
She should have. Right?
Jane, we need you now.
Right.
Well, so Mel, look, Ian and I are huge Mel Gibson fans, number one, right? So we grew up on Mad Max, Lethal Weapon, like those are the movies that we really responded to. So
I'm sorry, you forgot to mention Bird on a Wire, Eshom. I'm sorry. Just
thank you for throwing that out there. But we'd always been fans, and look, this script took 14 years for it to come to fruition. But in around 2017, we saw a screening of Hacksaw Ridge, and Mel Gibson was there doing a Q&A afterwards. He had this beautiful full beard. He had just come off the production. He's on the award circuit. He feels like he's a little run down. He's got the weight of the world on his shoulders. And Ian and I just turned to each other and we're like, oh, that's the guy. Like, that's Chris.
It feels like what we want. You know, he felt like he'd been doing a lot of work.
Yeah.
And then he had that burden of the world on his shoulders. So we were just like, oh man, that's the feeling we want this guy to have. And he was needing this beard,
But he's still got these shots of spark, right?
still passionate. You could see it in his eyes as he was talking about what he was making. We were just like, oh man, that's the guy right there. And then cut to 3 years later, you know, we send the script out to his agent and we were also looking for financing at the time. And so we were getting all these emails in that were like, you know, hey, you know, like the script, let's come in and meet and talk about it. And we were writing a ton of emails back, like, okay, great. Looking forward to chatting with you. I got this one email that was like, hey, really dug the script. I think it's really funny. Like, let's sit down and have a chin wag. And we were like, okay, first off, what's a chin wag? And then the second thing, we were like, okay, who is this? Because there was no sign off. And the email.
Yeah, it wasn't Mel Dude 25.
It was his email address. Yeah, his email address was like a pseudonym or a moniker. It was like a crazy weird thing. So I was like, okay, who is this? So I write back, thanks. I'm so glad you dug the script. Like, who am I talking with? And then he's like, oh, sorry, I forget to sign off sometimes. This is Mel. And I was like, it's Mel. So I called Ash. I'm like, wow, we got an email from Mel. So we got really excited. We set up this meeting. They're like, okay, you guys got 45 minutes at a cafe with him. Go sit down and, you know, chat with him and just get to know him. And we're like, holy shit, we get to know Mel.
Yeah, we're thinking like, okay, 45-minute conversation. Like, we're gonna have to get in there and like be succinct. And then that, well, 3.5 hours later, we're still talking to him.
Yeah,
we're talking about Braveheart. We're talking about everything. We're talking obviously about Fatman. And there was this moment.
Yeah, there was this incredible moment where we knew we had the right guy when he started talking about the moment where he's on the balcony looking out at the elves and he's going to tell them this terrible news. And he says, and Mel goes, you know, I feel like in that moment, like it's such a rough moment for this guy to tell them, like I should be almost in tears when I try to tell him that. And we're all, yeah. And he goes, and that's what's so funny about it. And we're all, exactly. That's exactly what's
wow. When you,
so he got those later.
God, that's crazy. First of all, please tell me that his email address was on Earthlink.
I can't remember what server.
It was on.
And when you do a Hollywood lunch, so I've come to find that as I am entering this new phase of my career, that I'm doing these a lot for filmmakers. So, when you do a Hollywood lunch, that's like everybody's dream. That's like, you know, every filmmaker watching right now is like, someday I would like to take a lunch with my favorite actor I grew up with. So who picks the cafe?
Yeah, go ahead.
Who picks the cafe? What do you order? And then do you immediately try to pay? And does your famous actor let you? Tell me all about that weirdly detailed aspect of it.
So it just depends on who picks, but in this case, Mel picked because we wanted something geographically agreeable to where he was.
And we were fine with that.
Great. Well, you know,
no
you're over in, you know, North Connecticut. Absolutely. We'll be there.
Whatever. Honestly, like, it's also kind of cool, right? Because you get to see where he's hanging out, because which I love, because a lot of times actors are like, oh, you mind if we meet at the, you know, Chateau Marmont, or hey, you mind if we meet at the blah, blah. They've got all these places that they like to hang out, or hey, you mind if we meet this kitschy little lunch place, or this. So we're getting introduced to. Yeah, I'm down, man. I'm down, because usually they pick cool places that have like a good this or a good that at that time of day, and it just depends. Like,
what was number two?
What was number two?
What did you order? Like, what were you just like go straight coffee? Like, what did you do?
This was a cafe. This is a cafe. So Ash got pretty excited about the Danishes right away.
I mean, it was like a croissant with like butter and cinnamon and sugar. And I went in there. I'm not gonna lie, I destroyed one of these things before Ian got there. And then when he came and showed up, I was like, "Hey, dude,
get down on one of these.
I'm buying one of these for you, and I'm buying another one for myself." So.
And then by the time Mel got there, we got there early and feasted. And by the time Mel got there, we had eaten, and we were just sitting there with teas waiting for him. And he comes in, and he had his own thing. So like, he brought his own thing.
It's like a protein drink or something.
Yeah, it was like a protein drink. He was going, oh God, I'm in the middle of these fucking protein drinks I'm drinking, because he was on this like kick. So like, I can't remember what he was saying. It was mainly like, he had kind of tried everything, and he was trying this new one with his trainer at the time, where she was saying, okay, well, let's try to get you eating like every couple hours, because it'll speed up your metabolism. Right, yeah. So he was trying that one at the time, and I think it worked really well for him. I think she led him in the right direction. But so he brought all his own stuff at that point.
And then what was number three?
I can't even remember, but that satisfies
Okay,
a lot of my. So
Well, who
he would
pays
have.
for it?
So you guys paid for your own stuff, and like he brought his
Yeah,
own
yeah.
thing, and
So like, but like the number one rule on that is we always pay,
We always offer.
no matter where.
I don't care if it's Jeff Bezos. I'm offering to pay.
Yeah,
Like
we're going to pay.
we pay.
I think that's a good move, because I think that it is. I always find it as symbolic. It's very hard for me personally to like, even if someone invites me to a meeting, it's hard for me to let them pay because I feel like, no, I appreciate this, so I want to pay. But I just think how
Sure.
funny it is that all of these. I always like to think backwards when I'm watching the movie, because we see a movie's a miracle that it gets on screen. It's the effort of so many people
Yeah.
put together. It's so magical. It best case scenario, it completely takes you away from where you are and influences the rest of your life. But when you go steps backward, it all started with two passionate people like in a basement arguing about bullet wounds.
Well, what's
And-
interesting?
True.
Like, so way back in ArcLight Hollywood days, Ian and I showed these two short stories to Jeremy. We pitched them to him, Jeremy Catalino, and he said,
This is back in like 02.
he said, write that. And that's honestly like to come to these, like, that'll get made. And here we are.
And there
So
you
many
go.
years
He didn't
later.
know that it would take 14 years after he finished the initial script. But
That's kind of that's sort of fast.
Yeah, in the glacial Hollywood scape.
I remember when I learned about Forrest Gump, and I was obsessed with the movie when it came out, and it's one of my kind of hallmark films from my youth. And when I learned later in film school that it won the Academy Award, producers accept Academy Awards because of how long producers spend with projects, not the glorified directors, even though obviously their efforts are important. Producer accepts the Academy Award for Best Picture. And Forrest Gump took a decade.
wow, yeah.
And it would, because it was a classic story. It's like, you guys have even been through it by now. It's like, it was sold, it was shelved, somebody wanted it, somebody was attached, then no one was, then it got let go and you needed to start the whole process over, et cetera, et cetera. So it's so many small things lead up to the big thing that we see. How was there any kind of nervousness on your part directing him?
Certainly.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, look, he's Oscar caliber, one of the greatest living directors on the planet right now. There's
He's a hell
certainly
of a filmmaker, man.
Yeah, and
yeah,
how is
right.
this going to work? How is this collaboration going to work? And honestly, we were so relieved when we got there. He's the most generous collaborator as a filmmaker. He absolutely understands what environment needs to be created to get the best results. And as filmmakers ourselves, like, we're picking his brain as much as humanly possible. We're like, hey, Mel, and he would sit there and just regale us with stories of like Braveheart, Hacksaw, anything we wanted to hear about. Totally open book. And not even just to us, like crew members. He'd be sitting there just having side conversations with crew members. Mel just genuinely loves being on set and
Likes
the
people,
whole process
he
of
likes
movies.
filmmaking. He was so generous, man. He was amazing.
I remember at one point he was like, "Oh, and Braveheart, like I double printed frames for emphasis," and we're like, "Oh, double printed frames!" Like,
Make a note of that.
we double printed frames in Fatman. We're taking every nugget we could from him.
Yeah, he was pretty amazing. Like, I mean, he was very much lead by example on set. So like we were dressed, as if we were going to go summit Everest, where he was dressed.
But mind you, guys, it's negative 30 degrees.
Negative 30 degrees out in that shootout, that last end shootout. And so like we're out there for 4 days straight. So it's 14 to 16 hours out in the snow, negative 30. And then we would say, cut, okay, hey Mel, you're good, go to the warming tent.
Yeah, we shot him out.
So, okay, no problem. So he'd step back, and then 20 minutes later we turn around and there he is behind us. We're like, oh hey, sorry, did you
miss the memo?
Sorry, like, go to the warming tent, you're freezing, I get it. He's like, no, he's like, I'm gonna be out here with you, I'm not going into the warming tent. And he never went into the warming tent. He stayed out there in his fingerless gloves and his costume, sipping a green tea, chatting with everybody in between takes, and like, horsing around with the actors. It was great, man.
I remember my college thesis was a musical, and it was
Mhm.
it was a really challenging technical journey for me, and the dancers. So sound is so important, as you guys know, like it, that I went to the sound mixer and I was like, how do we record the sound? What can I tell my inexperienced sound recordist in order to fully capture what we need to on set in order to make the sound work in post?
Yeah.
And he said, well, if your dancers can do their routines without music and you can record them wild, that's really going to help give it volume,
Yeah.
you know, so to speak, when you mix it. So I called our choreographer and I was like, you're gonna have to do this impossible thing, and you can't even clap for them because you can't have the sound of the clapping. She was like, we're gonna work on it. So not only when they got to set were they able to do that kind of stuff, which blew my mind, I would try to
That's so-
send them on break.
Yeah.
Same thing. This is why I remember the story, because I'd look at them out in the fields, like just hanging out in the only free space, and they're dancing again. And I'm like, guys, break, like rest. But that energy of like when you're around people that just are loving it so much, it's like,
It's
Well,
contagious.
I feel like
Yeah.
that's just anything you love, right? I mean, I can't tell you how many times, Gray, I look and I'm like, oh, she's doing a YouTube show. Oh, she's on CNN. Oh, she's there. I see you everywhere as well, and I'm just like, she's nonstop, man. Like this woman is tired.
it's funny because I feel like at this point, so I've been doing this for a while, and I never even knew this was a job. I
Right.
definitely didn't know that you could turn nosiness into a paycheck.
Passion, Gray. Passion.
Thank you. Excuse me. Yes. So I didn't know that was possible. And I was too dumb. Like looking back, I was too dumb about Hollywood and inexperienced to have any idea that what I was doing was generally not allowed.
Hmm.
So I just did it. And people like, maybe they were like distracted by my hair or something and they just let me do whatever. And now I find myself at a very interesting point of my work because, and by the way, this will eventually lead up to a question for you guys, but
Yeah, we're good. Listen,
I'm dying to see where this goes. Keep going.
so I'm at an interesting point where now I know the rules. I'm very familiar with the rules, and everything that I used to do is now a rule that no one will allow, right? So it's like I would go into rooms with people and I would do bits without permission, and the talent would love it, and then I would leave and I'd get the footage and I'd move on. So now I was just thinking the other day about how I heard the phrase, everything has to be cleared with the studio.
Wow.
And I was like, what a difference in, for me in my work. I'm left like, ugh, like what am I supposed to do, right? Because everything that I used to know is different. And for years and years I couldn't contractually have my own YouTube. Isn't that weird?
It's
That's
so bizarre.
insane. Really?
Yeah, because everything I had to do had to feed into my employer. And so what I'm doing now is sort of this, I'm finding myself in this re-envisioning or new understanding of what it is I'm here to do. Like, why am I here and what am I doing in this world? And because truly, like, movies mean so much to me, and connecting to people through movies has been, I mean, it's been a huge evolution for me as a person, and it's been amazing. And so what I was thinking about this morning is I was just like taking myself on a stroll down memory lane, and I was thinking about all the times that we spent before we were doing what we do, and how all of our friends are doing all this interesting creative stuff all over the map. And is there a thing that you guys are seeing a few movies in now I mean, because you've made a lot more than just 4 movies, but certainly the last 4 features have been the ones that I'm talking about the most.
Sure, yeah.
Is there something now that you feel like you know that's standing out to you that you didn't know before?
I would say looking back at it is interesting because it takes a couple of films, I think, at least, before you start to see some patterns, right? And like I remember when you first start making movies, the first thing everybody starts talking about is like, oh, what's your voice, or what's your this, or what's your that, or how are you going to be making the film a certain way, or writing a certain way, how you can be directing a certain way. And I remember thinking like, oh, well, I guess like I don't know, you know what I mean? And now looking back at our films and kind of looking at the last couple and seeing where we're going and seeing like what we're turning into, or what, and I think we're turning into the best version of ourselves, you know, as creatives. And yeah, it's interesting to look back at the last couple of films and go like, wow, okay, I know now what we do and where we're going and what we're like right now anyway.
Yeah,
like, I can
it could
see
evolve.
it. I can see it. Yeah, that's interesting. I think that's interesting for us because
We didn't go out and consciously try to
Yeah.
create a style. It just sort of emerged through our own
exactly.
tastes.
You don't sit there and go, when I'm writing this because my style's like this and da 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 da. You just have all these influences of like us. For it's like, you know, we made this small town crime and we went to South by with it, and I remember they had this great questionnaire that was like, and this was kind of the first time I really started thinking about it, and it says, what are your favorite films and how do they relate to what you've made? And so I'm like, oh, my favorite films, Predator, Aliens,
HUD, Last Picture Show.
Yes.
American Graffiti. And then I'm like, how does this fucking relate to the movie that we just made? Like, I don't know. Like, you know, and then I'm like thinking of like Leone Westerns and like the Dirty Harry films and Lethal Weapons. And I'm like, fuck, like we're all over the board. But that's pretty much how everybody is, right? Like, everybody has
Very eclectic.
all these eclectic tastes that they pick out. They smash them together and they spit out the movies that are in their head, and they have this voice attached to them. And I think the more you do, the more clear you get. And like, I mean, there's people that are clearer than some on initial, but even like someone like Quentin, who was like Tarantino, who was pretty specific off the bat, has morphed into this very Tarantino feel in the last 2 or 3 films. Like, I mean, they're like so stamped. But even you go back to Reservoir Dogs and you could see it, and you couldn't tell at that point exactly where he was going to end up. But looking back, it makes sense. But now looking at the films he's doing now, you're just like, holy shit, these are like his own thing. Like there's nobody doing anything what he's doing.
I see that exact thing that you're talking about in looking at my influences too, because I don't really consider what I do to be journalism at all. I always felt like I'm more of an entertainer with a niche. And
sure,
I look at the comedians that I love when I was a kid, and I look at the things that I used to watch. And then I see exactly what you're saying, which is it's channeled through me, and
That's
I put
what
it
I
out
am.
there, and it's
Yeah.
like, oh, of course I love Elvira. Of course
Yeah.
I love Johnny Carson. Like,
Yes.
of course. And when I watch all the stuff that I saw when I was a kid, it's like, of course this informs how I edit interviews or how my comedic timing works or whatever. And it was even funny, like there's just in the movie you guys call a shot of whiskey and Alka-Seltzer a Johnny Carson.
Yeah.
Is that a thing?
It's a thing. It's a thing
because we had thought of the combo, and then we did some Googling, and we're like, is this actually a drink? And then it's like, oh, it's a Johnny Carson.
Somebody called it a Johnny Carson, which we thought was great.
Jesus, that's funny. Well, but even that little moment just got me to thinking about like, why does my heart get so happy when I hear his name? Like I just get like, and it's because I watch so much of Carson, who I think is one of the most generous interviewers that I've ever seen in my life, because he can talk to everyone and draw out what is interesting about them. And it never felt like he had a pre-interview. I know that he would, because it's a professional TV show and you need that. But at the same time, like he embraced the unexpected in a way that made everyone a part of it. even if he was like making fun of someone, he was doing it with this kind of like, come here, buddy, like a noogie.
A little noogies.
What I also liked about him, when you're saying the generousness, like it's also pretty amazing to watch some of those. And I mean, I was alive for some of them, but I wasn't alive for all of them. But in looking back at some of those episodes where like he does such an amazing job of just letting them run at times, you know what I mean? And like he'll even like sit there and just laugh, and then he'll stop and he'll be like, and like maybe he'll ask a question, but maybe not. And if someone like Robin Williams, they'll just keep going, you know, or Don Rickles, like they'll just keep going. But then like he'll just sit back, and then okay, we got to take a break. That's kind of all he says, you know.
If you treat this experience like something that you have to generate, then you've lost. You can't interact with people and try to like just grind the gears. Like you need to remember that people bring, but it's a scary space to live in, I think.
Yeah.
Because letting a silence breathe, or letting a connection linger, or not really having a plan is sort of terrifying, you know. And so it's, and I had the wheels turning this morning, because I feel like directing, when you're dealing with one of your personal heroes, is sort of the same space to live in, because it's like you don't want to. It's very likely that a lot of people would approach it like they don't want to look a certain way, or they don't, you know, it's like they don't want to make an asshole out of themselves on the set of their feature film. And so it's cool to hear you guys talk about it, and to know that your on-set experience for the movie was exactly what every movie nerd hopes for.
Yeah, it was.
It really was a joy. But I also think, look, like yourself, like we're chasing a passion, right? And that passion, at many times, while you're working really extremely hard and long hours, it doesn't feel like work. So then that can fuel you through the dark times, you know, and that genesis from going from passion to a job, it's natural.
Yeah, like I think it's just really enjoying what you're doing is everything, honestly, because you can work, you know, an entire day, get no sleep, get back up, working another entire day. You got a whole week of those in a row. And when you're on a movie, most of the time, it's like it's pretty exhausting. And like you just keep getting back up and going, because you're excited to go and to see what the next day is going to bring.
I mean, you get to sleep, you know, between 3 and 4 hours a night when you're directing.
Yeah, it's nuts.
So Ian and I get up, we storyboard before we get to the set, we're on shooting, you know, and it's just, but that fuel, that energy, you're so excited, it's like tireless.
Yeah.
I already want to know. I'm like, what's the next thing? Who are you talking to? What are you writing? What are you drawing? Like, I just want to know everything, because I just get excited for you guys. I'm so proud of you, because I think everything that I watch, I'm like, shit, man. Like, I have different responses to each one, with different meaning and all these different senses of place. And I definitely do think what you're talking about as far as hitting your stride goes, I feel that as a viewer of your work. Not to get all like, you know, give you not to shower you with compliments, guys, because it's gross, but
I really appreciate that, honestly.
I appreciate that.
Ian and I, you know, we don't make these movies to watch at home alone in our garage, so it's nice to hear that people enjoy them.
Exactly. Someone's getting something out of them.
But I think for us, like what we're working on, like we've got several projects in the hopper. Ian and I are really excited to get back. We have a few things that we've been writing on already, but we want to get back in there and get some new stuff going.
Yeah.
This is kind of this time of a pause could be beneficial for guys like you that really put in the work. Like, do you find yourself like just really taking advantage of, I'm assuming things have slowed down for you. So do you find yourself really taking advantage of that?
Well, I would say this. So it's been kind of weird and miraculous in a lot of ways. So we finished shooting Fatman the day before they shut down every production in Canada.
And then we spent 6 months after that, like doing all of our post.
Wow.
So then we're in the sort of press cycle, and we're just now kind of coming out the other side. I think in 2 weeks, you know, it'll be out on VOD, and we can like sit back for a second and like let it do its thing.
And posting a movie in COVID times, is a really unique experience. I mean, Ian and I, we ended up editing the movie in his basement.
So we were,
Of course.
we usually have like a really interactive process when we're doing the screenings and trying to hone our edit. Like we usually like to bring 5 or 6 people over at a time, and sometimes we'll do it 20, 30, 40 times as we're trying to hone certain things and literally be asking pointed questions like, that line right there, did that work for you? Did that give you anything? Like sometimes it's that specific when we do an entire screening. It's like, did that line carry over to these other 3 moments for you? Nope. Okay, we got to think of a better ADR line, or we got to add an ADR line, or we got to, like
those audience screeners are just a critical part of our process.
We couldn't do it on this one. What we did do is we sent out screeners to everybody.
We did it. We just did
and then one-on-one them.
Yeah.
But it's different. So it definitely worked this time, which was great.
But it was so much longer.
Yeah.
So like we would send out the screeners, and then we do follow-ups. And then rather than having everyone in one room and talking to them, it was like an hour and a half, 2-hour phone call with each viewer. So imagine doing that 150 times. It was pretty wild.
It was a lot.
And yet the movie doesn't feel overnoted. That's cool, because I also can generally smell like a movie that got noted to death. That's usually when I'm watching something and I'm like, this just doesn't feel right. Like chances are, like somebody came in and they were like, I don't know, it seems too mean, or whatever dumb shit people say.
I guess what helps us in that direction is that we've done it on every movie we've ever made. So, and we've kind of honed the process. So I think at one point it gets so specific that sometimes, we're also looking for certain things. So if somebody comes in as like, this should be more rom-com-y, we're like, okay, that's out the window. You're not even in the same planet as us or whatever. Like if the notes don't make sense, we're pretty good now about throwing them away, because in the beginning, someone says this should be a rom-com and you're like, oh, fuck. This should be a fucking rom-com. Did we fuck this up? You start to panic, where it's like, no. You like calm down, like bring it back. Like what was the initial idea we had when we first made this, and how did we feel about it? You gotta kind of keep that the whole time as your center, and then it's okay to go explore some certain things, but also try to recognize when you really screw it up.
I think it's a real testament to our collaborators, our producerial team.
That helps too.
Who said, go make your movie.
Yeah,
we're here to facilitate and help in any way. We want to see the movie the Nelms brothers,
because it can be a fight. We made some bold choices in this film, and those could have been a fight, but they really were like, hey, this is your movie, we believe in you. Oh, you need an R rating? Okay, great, have an R rating. Oh, it's gonna be a little gory at the end. Okay, well, we're okay with that. Those were the things.
Yeah, you had this obscure Chinese track. Like, let's figure out how to make that happen.
Okay, how do we get a hold of the government and get that track?
Yeah, we had to call the government to get it cleared.
It was nuts. So all those weird little things and moments, like we fought for in the beginning. It was like, hey, these are the choices, the type of movie we're making. Hopefully, you're on board with that, or we're gonna have to go somewhere else.
Look at you, confident artists. I just love it.
You got to just fake it.
It's fake it.
That's the thing. For years that was my favorite phrase, because it was like, I know that I'm capable of doing this. It's just that I don't have the credits behind me at this point. So wink, wink, and then all I need, and I think the same for you guys, is like just a foot in the door.
That's it.
Yeah. Give me a shot. Just give me a shot.
Because we'll kick it wide open.
Yeah. No, we feel the same way. We feel the same way.
I've kept you guys so much longer than I asked initially, and your children are angels, and so I can't
believe they haven't come down the steps and been like, Dad, what's going on down here?
I know they deserve like some extra ice cream or whatever treats you don't normally give them, and tell them they're from a strange pink-haired lady they don't know.
Oh, so I will tell them that.
Great, it's been such a pleasure. Thank you so
much, Gray.